All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about the channel. Second rule of the channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be after waivers for the opening round of your playoffs. If you have your bye week, you're still going to be doing your roster maintenance stuff to get ready for week 16. If you backdoored your way in, you're going to be knife fighting for that chip. And again, like I will start off with a little bit of story time. Last year, I got bounced out of my main money league because I went up to my co-manager and said I got this feeling about the Chargers and Raiders. I want to roll the Raiders defense. They put up about like 30 points in the opening round last year, and my co-manager was like, nah, I don't want to get cute. I just want to play it safe. And I will talk about this and say that like you may need to get a little bit cute to win your chips, to roll out some of those guys that are out there. Like it's also nice to get a little bit lucky, but like getting cute, getting right on those like massive spike week guys, that's a good way to win your chip. It's also a good way to to throw up a good goose egg. But again, do you want to come in third place or do you want to come in first? Like that's kind of what you got to talk about. At this point in your season, you pretty much got who you got. There's going to be a very limited amount of guys coming off the waiver wire that are going to be able to help you. They're probably going to be able to help your opponent a lot better because like he can get cute, right? This year there really hasn't been a whole bunch of your league winner types, like your Pukas last year, something like that, your Nikos. What we've gotten this year is a whole bunch of weekly winners that were predictive. And that's going to end up being your playoffs. You pick George Pickens in the right week to be rolling, you're going to make it into your finals. So just think about that a little bit out there when it comes to making your decisions about like who to sit, who to start, like who to be making sure that you're not going to lose the chip to because you don't want them in someone else's lineup. Something along those lines when you're doing your roster construction stuff. Heading into this week, if you're going to be picking some guys up after waivers, or you're going to be getting ready to roll your cute upside plays for next week, something along those lines when it comes down to that. Now, defensively, and I'll start off with this is my stats. There are a lot of choices to choose from next week. There's no buys, no more buys. Don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Right now, I'm looking over at my notes. The two big ones that I can see that you could probably be stashing if the Titans are available. They're going to be going up against turnover machine Anthony Richardson. He takes a lot of sacks also. And then the Packers, if they're available, especially coming off of what's going on with the Saints and their quarterback situation, like that would be the defenses to be picking up a week ahead if they're available. Again, I don't know your league. That's when it comes down to it. Some of the other ones, and again, we can talk about like getting cute. The Giants going up against the Falcons. That'll go both ways. Remember that. And then I don't know how much I really would want to be rolling the Bills going up against New England. You can talk about that. Like, rookie quarterback is a little bit in turnover prone in Drake May. We can talk a little bit about that. Detroit going up against the Bears. Detroit's probably not going to be available, but if they are, you could talk about like doing that. I don't know how much you really want to be rolling the Bengals defense going up against the Browns. That's probably more of I want to roll the deeper toys out offensively than really trying to go like, hey, Famous Jameis is a turnover machine. But again, if you get cute and you get like one of those Famous Jameis weeks and you're rolling the Bengals defense, you could theoretically get that when it comes down to that. I'm looking over at my notes. Rams versus Jets. The Jets have been an absolute train wreck. You could definitely see rolling the Rams that week. Eagles and your Redskins. The Eagles have looked better defensively. Cards and Packers or Cards and Panthers. This is one of the ones that I would talk about saying like, hey, sometimes your gut is going to tell you something. Like the Panthers have looked better. You could talk about like the Cardinals are not necessarily a bad defense. I don't know if I would necessarily go like I'm going to get cute and I'm going to roll that, but like we could tell the story where afterwards, right now, if you're going to be stashing that defense, the Cards defense going up against Panthers, we could tell that story. Already talked about right here. Did not talk about this one. The Jaguars and the Raiders, and this is another one, like it can go either way. This is probably going to be a very ugly game. And if you get lucky with a pick six, like that would be a spike week based off those defenses. Mac Jones going up against like Desmond Ridder, maybe at this point, like that's something to be like, hey, can you speculate on? Can you get cute on that one and get right on that one? And then the other thing, Buccaneers going up as Cowboys, and I don't know how much I'd be wanting to rely on the Buccaneers defense going up against Cooper Rush, something like that down the line. All right, let's get into the rest of the stuff that's out there. I'm looking at my notes. The 49ers blew out the Bears. And the Bears and the 49ers, I've been talking about this all season, or lately. The Bears and the 49ers have been so inconsistent that they're basically all going to be coin flips for the rest of the year. Like that means like your playoff schedules when we're trying to guess points, and it's like going to be very difficult to go like this is the roll this week when you can get like a sub 40-degree day, or you get that like spike week that you remember for the upcoming seasons, because there's going to be some of those predictive stuff that's going to be available out there. So again, take some of this numbers with a grain of salt when it comes down to like being able to predict this. This was an absolute drubbing. The main one, like if you're living under a rock, Isaac Garriendo, he did miss again today. This is Tuesday, before waivers. He did miss on this one. So we are tracking Patrick Taylor to be someplace in the RB2 range to replace Isaac Garriendo. We don't know how long that's going to be out. And again, from an after waivers perspective, I don't know how deep your league is. I don't know how competitive it is. You can start talking about your stashing of your Keyshawn Vaughns or your Israel Abanikandahs. You can get into that range when it comes down to that. And then even to the point I didn't talk about this in Chasing the Dragon, you can talk about rolling Kyle Juszczyk out as a desperation RB2 or even stashing him. Like, who knows what's going to go on. I don't have any news on the foot injury for Isaac Garriendo. If you're wondering, in this game before he went out, he was at 56% snaps, 12 for 78, 2 touchdowns. I was watching the ticker on this one. He was inefficient early. These are 2 red zone carries that he converted. 2 red zone carries that he converted into 2 tugs. So he didn't have multiple red zone carries. He only had the 2. He did get those in, and then 2 for 50, and I think one of them was like a scramble drill, something like that. So if you're wondering all of that stuff, Patrick Taylor, like, I don't really have an opinion on him. I think he's like more of a trustworthy guy. That's why he's been bouncing in around the 49ers. They did release him. He went to the practice squad. He came back. So, like, that's what you're looking at with him. That's why I would say, like, I would probably be looking at, like, 60 to 70% snaps. I don't think they're going to go, like, full bell cow on him. They're still going to have Debo. They've got a lot of other weapons there, and they've been inconsistent. Yeah, your guess is going to be good as mine when it comes down to that. Some of the other things to be looking at, and I'm scrolling down. Debo was at 79% snaps in this game. This is not necessarily, like, anything that we didn't know. He's not going to be the guy more than likely in the offense. You might get a rushing touchdown out of him, and it won't even pull up on me. 79% snaps, 3 for 2 for 22, 5 for 13. So he did have 5 carries to go along with this. 1 red zone target, 2 red zone carries. So that would be primarily the guy that I would be saying I'm not going to be too upset that I don't get Patrick Taylor in my lineup. I would rather be rolling out Debo at this point. There he goes. Rather be rolling out Debo, expecting that he's going to fall in the end zone as a red zone running back, something along those lines, than Patrick Taylor. Patrick Taylor, I really don't want to see in the playoffs. That I'd be more concerned with that one when it comes down to it. He had 18 air yards compared to Juwan Jennings 82, and Ricky Pearsall had 37 in this one. And we can bring up Juwan Jennings. He may end up being like in that league winning tier of guys this season, if we're wondering about that. Like 74% snaps, 8 for 7 for 90, 2 tugs in this one. Those are 2 red zone targets that he had that he converted into this one. I do have like league winner written down in my notes. If you're wondering about that stuff, so like, what do you got when it comes down to Juwan Jennings? Like, you got a pretty solid wide receiver 2 at this point. Like, I don't know if we could necessarily go as far as say like wide receiver 1, but it doesn't matter. It's, can we predict something type of spike weeks? These are 3 really good games. If we can get a certain amount of consistency out of the 49ers, the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Lions could turn into absolute shootouts, which is good from a fantasy perspective. So I am going to be rolling out some of the deeper guys. If you're in leagues where you're wondering about Ricky Pearsall, he's still probably a stash if either Debo goes down or if Jennings goes down, something like that. He was only at 49% snaps in this game. Again, it was kind of a blowout. 49ers will run, a lot of 2 running backs. That's why Juszczyk is such a big deal. He did have a red zone target in this game to go along with only those 2 targets for 5 yards in this one. And then Kittle, he's another one that like would be expecting that he's going to get an uptick. But again, how inconsistent they have been coming off of week 13 where he did 2 for 1 for 7. He was at 85% snaps, 6 for 6 for 151 in this one. He had only 48 air, but he was able to convert that into 103 yak and did have red zone targets. So again, when guys tend to go down, there's usually not like a 1-to-1 for replacement. The guys that they do have tend to get the boost. That's why like Debo's going to get an upgrade from probably like wide receiver 3 land to wide receiver 2 land. Juwan Jennings, like you could make that argument that he's like a league winner. And then Kittle's going to be the guy before like I'm really concerned with like Patrick Taylor. I definitely do think that like you're going to get an uptick in work in juice. I don't think he's necessarily fantasy relevant. And then with Patrick Taylor, some of the other guys, like They do probably like and trust Patrick Taylor. I don't know how much they're going to be working in Keyshawn Vaughn or Israel Benekendit, but that's how I would see it breaking down on that one. And then if you're wondering about Kyle Purdy for the rest of the season, like I mean, these are three really good predictive matchups when it comes down to it. And then it just becomes an issue of can you trust the offense? And I don't know. And they only have like a 7% chance to win the play or make playoffs at this point. So it's not going to be surprising that some of these players start getting shut down for certain reasons. So just kind of remember that in the back of your head if you're going to be planning ahead of time when it comes to like not just the 49ers, but other teams that are out there. All right. Moving on to the Bears, we were talking about them already. Again, they're not very predictive at this point. Absolutely got thrashed by the 49ers in this one. And this was a game that like, you could definitely see that it could have gone both ways. The matchup says like, hey, the Bears are a good offense. We could also say that the Bears are a bad offense. 49ers are good defense, or that the Bears offense will overcome that. Didn't happen in this one when it comes down to like, again, trying to guess these matchups with Caleb Williams. If you need to be rolling out your Caleb Williams shares. Vikings defense is very volatile because they stop the run, they blitz. The Lions, they should be in a negative script, and then Seattle is, from a fantasy perspective, not very predictive. That's just because the offense can be, unpredictable between, are they going to run the football a lot? Are they going to throw the football a lot? Like they've been all over the place, like from a fantasy perspective, if you're wondering about that. So Roschon was out again with a concussion, kind of got like full bell cow. DeAndre Swift, 79% snaps, 14 for 38, 2 for 1 for 2 in this one. And I'm looking over at my notes. He did have 4 red zone opportunities in this one. So when Roschon comes back, you can expect him to step back in the red zone opportunities. That's what Roschon does. You can also expect that if he's not getting design passing work, some of that check down monster stuff is going to go to Roschon. I don't have any news on Roschon at this point. If you're in leagues where Roschon is available, like, yeah, he's definitely a stash. Like, this would have, like, league winner written all over him if he can go full bell cow because there's an injury to Swift. And then with all this, like, Travis Homer, I was not really able to find a lot on this injury that he might have. It just said head injury. So 13% snaps, 3 targets in this one. And again, like, that's why I generally would say, like, you didn't pay a lot for DeAndre Swift. You might get a spike week. You might not when it comes down to it. And Minnesota's going to stop the run. I can tell you that in week 15. That's how they're designed right now. And I can actually, so I have this pulled up, I can go show you that I'm not making this stuff up when you're looking at the second best run defense in all of football when it comes down to that. So if you're wondering about that, where I get up with this stuff. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about like Rome when it comes to the receivers for the Bears in this one. And, this was the predictive stuff that I was talking about. Like, sometimes you don't need to know how the sausage is made. He did have 2 red zone opportunities. He converted those into 2 touchdowns. That's how you get to your, you're not, or 18.2 week, 5 for 2 for 42. Again, it's the 2 touchdown catches in this one. Keenan Allen had 89% snaps. DJ Moore, 91% snaps. So the more important thing with all this is Rome was at 92% snaps. He outsnapped everybody in this one. He led everybody in air yards. He only had 62. DJ Moore had 41. Keenan Allen had 37. So he's still the guy in the offense that I would most likely want to be rolling out at the price I paid for him relative to how disappointing DJ Moore has been and Keenan Allen. Those guys have been like higher picks. So I've already had to adapt my my lineup to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. If I picked up those guys and Rome, I've just been rolling as my wide receiver through my flex. So I'm probably not going to like overthink that too much, even though I know I could get that sub 40 degree day or I could get that spike week when it comes down to it. DJ Moore, like I have no idea relative to what I paid on him. So hopefully I picked up somebody else like a Jawan Jennings to be putting into that spot with him. In this one, I don't have anything really to talk about like Keenan Moore or DJ Moore or Keenan Allen. When it comes to your deep enough leagues that you're looking at Cole Kmet, like this is another one, 92% snaps, no opportunities in this one. He's just going to stay a streamer based off of how much he's on the field. So like if he's available in your league and you need that dart throw, especially with some of these matchups that are going on like Minnesota, Detroit, and Seattle, like there are worse guys to be chasing when it comes down to it. All right. Bengals on Monday night. And this is one of the ones that like could have turned into a little bit of shootout. It didn't in this one. So like I'm not going to talk too much about like Joe Burrow and quote unquote like MVP of real life land or like league winner quarterback 3 when you probably didn't pay quarterback 3 prices on him. Already had like one of my co-managers say like, hey, I guess we're drafting Jamar Chase next year. So again, the objective right way to go is pick up elite quarterback. The also objective right way to go is not spend on elite quarterback and pivot to other guys and then get lucky. when it comes down to these guys. So again, if you went after your Joe Burrows, you look good. If you went after your CJ Strouds, you don't look good. And it's the same process. All right. Chase Brown in this one, 83% snaps. I looked it up. Khalil Herbert, only 10% of the snaps. More importantly, when it comes to Chase Brown, all 5 red zone opportunities for the running backs went to him, so it didn't go to Khalil Herbert, so you're not going to probably be overthinking that one when it comes down to it. Chase, he had 3 red zone opportunities. He tugged on one. T. Higgins, as bad of a performance as he put up for you, hopefully you didn't need him. Going into your chip, or you're going into your playoffs, he did have 2 red zone opportunities. That's how close you got, and they didn't go to him. So that's just how it goes sometimes. So you're not probably going to be overthinking that one. Yosivas was at 68% snaps. Some of the stuff to be thinking about going into the playoffs run. This week 16 game against Cleveland may end up deciding a lot of championship games. If it's a really ugly game, and it could be a really ugly game, you don't want to be rolling out your shares that are not like Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, something like that. Like T. Higgins is probably pretty safe. If this turns into an absolute barn burner, because it's famous Jameis and the offense that's going on right now for the Browns, now you're starting to talk about like your deeper league stashing Yosivas for this role, because he was at 68% snaps in this game. There was a little bit of a Jermaine Burton citing 13% snaps, no opportunities in this one. And then a little bit of news, Trenton Irwin, he did get picked up by the Panthers after getting released on that one. A couple other things from a tight end perspective. And again, this was kind of an uglier script game. Mike Gesicki was down to 28% snaps. So again, I don't know how much I trust that one. He did have a red zone opportunity. And then Drew Sample right here. Again, this was a little bit more of a run-heavy game, 69% snaps. He's the blocking tight end. If you're wondering about, like, should I get a little crazy and go after Gesicki? I don't think so. No news on Dalton Kincaid when it comes to the Bills right now. And there's also no news on Keon Coleman when it comes to the Bills. Like, this is probably going to be a pretty ugly, receiver by committee, whatever term you want to use to come down to. I can't think of it right now. Anyway, and then we'll talk about like Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper may end up winning a lot of leagues at this point. So, only at 53% snaps, 14 targets, 6 for 95 in this absolute shootout that they had with the Rams. And again, looking at the schedule, they're going to probably get into a shootout with the Lions. And then the being able to predict these 2 not good matchups when it comes to the Patriots and the Jets, that's probably going to be deciding it. So I'm going to scroll my notes up. What did Cooper do on those 53% snaps, 14 targets? He had 194 air yards in this game. Now, Khalil Shakur, like he's going to be the 40-degree day guy. If you're wondering about that one, I will bring it back up here. He was at 78% snaps in this game, 8 for 5 for 106 and a touchdown. That was a red zone opportunity, and 99 air yards, 53 yak. That's what he had. Mac Hollins was at 77% snaps in this one, 6 for 4 for 57, 21-yard touchdown. So it's just outside of a red zone range when it comes down to it. Curtis Samuel, it was at 60% snaps in this one. And again, like getting right on these receivers during the playoffs is going to be really interesting. Like you roll your Khalil Shakurs or your Curtis Samuel, or not, Khalil Shakurs or your Amari Coopers, and you get that sub 40-degree day. That's going to hurt, obviously. And then with Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins running at the snap shares that they are, like they're still fantasy viable, especially for that Detroit game when it comes out there. So like, again, what did the dart throw you're going to be throwing out there? We can talk about like there may be guys that we can get deep on when it comes to the Bills. It's just a matter of like, can we necessarily predict the guy that I would necessarily want to go after Shakir or Amari Cooper? I probably can't at this point. If Keon Coleman continues to get out, be out, like Mac Hollins would be the guy based off of snap share, and then Curtis Samuel, again, like the snap share is still going to say like there is a possibility that it could happen. Now, tight end wise, with Dalton Kincaid out, like Dawson Knox was absolute disappointment. 82% snaps, 1 for 5. So again, the only guy like Dalton Kincaid comes back, this would change the landscape. I wouldn't be chasing after like the third wide receiver. Because he's going to be the third wide receiver if you're wondering about that one. And then Keon Coleman, he may end up slotting back into that red zone role. So again, like he's worth the stash if he's available down the line. If you get some news that he's going to be healthy. Running back wise, first and foremost, when it comes to James Cook, 45% snaps, 6 for 20, 2 for 9 in this one. I have to talk about Josh Allen. I should go back and talk about him in my notes. So I shouldn't say the news. The story that we were telling ourselves that the Bills are been trying to move Josh Allen out of that goal line fullback role. It's not a thing, and we should probably stop talking about it. So he had 6 total touchdowns in this one. He had two red zone pass attempts, 6 red zone carries, and he converted those 6 red zone carries into 3 touchdowns. So again, this week with James Cook, going back to like the offseason where like based off snap share and usage, this was going to happen. And again, rolling out those good shares or those good pieces and those good matchups are a good thing. But again, like you can get burned doing that also because the analytics are saying like there's going to be this week where everything doesn't work out the right direction. Now, does that mean I'm not going to roll up against the Lions? No, that doesn't mean that. It just means like, yeah, you definitely know you have a sub 40-degree day in a range of outcomes for James Cook, and hopefully he got it out of the system. That's not how math works, though, unfortunately. Ty Johnson in this one, deeper leagues, yeah, you could talk about stashing him. 35% snaps, 3 for 2 for 55, and a touchdown in this one. That was a 41-yard touchdown. He had the only red zone opportunity, and that was a target also in this one. So again, if you're chasing those touchdowns, when it comes down to it, and then Ray Davis at 22% snaps, nothing when it comes down to it. So again, like, your guess is going to be as good as mine when it comes down to it. Like those good offenses that don't care about your fantasy lineup. Just remember that. Broncos, I don't think I have any news to talk about when it comes down to them. Browns, we could talk about this. Moving on to them. They were in a not close game against the Steelers. That's the nice way to put it. It wasn't really a blowout. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, they were playing from behind for the most part when it comes down to it. So again, famous Jameis, like 17 points. That kind of surprised me when I was breaking it down. 2 touchdown passes. He did have 2 interceptions and a fumble not lost on top of that one. And again, like Kansas City is going to be a good defense. The Bengals and the Dolphins, like, yeah, you can predict this. It doesn't mean that famous Jameis is going to cooperate with you saying that those are supposed to be good matchups in this one. So Nick Chubb, he was down at 36% snaps in this game, 11 for 48, and he also had a target. The red zone carry for them went to Jerome Ford. 56% snaps, 10 for 28, 4 for 3 for 19 in this one. And I bring this up because, yeah, you could talk about like desperation roles when it comes to Jerome Ford with the Bengals and the Dolphins rolling up there. It does generally look like Nick Chubb is only the running back in very specific situations that they're using him for, just to rush the football. Probably still the red zone guy, but that's not how it worked out this week when it comes down to it. Jerry Jeudy's another one we can talk about, like league winner, 6 for 5 for 64 and a touchdown in this one. 60 air yards to Elijah Moore's 45, if you're wondering about that type of stuff. No news right now on Cedric Tillman. Still in the protocol, as of 14 hours ago. So, like, no news on him when it comes down to it. So, like, that compression of opportunities, like Jerry Jeudy's a role, Elijah Moore's a role, David Njoku, obviously, he's probably sub-unicorn tier when it comes down to that type of stuff. And then Michael Woods, this is more like Dynasty League stuff. So with Thrash out, Michael Woods did roll at 88% snaps. And again, can we talk about maybe there's a week with Michael Woods if X, Y, and Z happens? Like, yeah, but this is all after waiver stuff. So like you're probably not going to have to knife fight for Michael Woods, but he's on the field enough to talk about having that week. And then David Njoku in this one, 3 red zone targets. In this one, he did he did have 90% snaps, 13 for 7 for 42, and a touchdown in this one. And I'm looking at my notes. 3 red zone targets. He converted one of those, and then 105 air yards, which, again, is a little odd for David Njoku. He's normally kind of like a check down monster type of guy, but like he has the ability to be used in all this. I'm looking at my notes if you're wondering. He can be used in all the different ways. So like predictive wise, it's going to be difficult to say like David Njoku is going to be used in a particular way. But from a tight end perspective, we're looking at like targets, air yards, yak, and red zone opportunities. He doesn't get them all on any given week. Like he could get that, but he gets components of that on any given week, which means like that's why he's in that sub tier when it comes to tight ends. All right. Buccaneers. So right now, if you're wondering on Bucky Irving, there's going to be no news on him that I saw. So that's why we can start talking about like if Sean Tucker is available on your waiver wire. He probably shouldn't be because again, he's got the road to win leagues. He should be picked up only 18% snaps. 3 for 47. That's really efficient in this one. 2 targets. I did see the comment, and I will respond to it when I'm done with this tonight, about knowing who to drop and when. And again, that's like really difficult because it has to do with like your league size and your league settings, because again, like the more roster spots you have, the more that you can stash certain guys that have like the story to tell to win leagues, and that means you can pull certain guys out of your lineup and uh, put in those cute plays when you're trying to catch that like spike week, that predictive spike week that we can talk about. Like, so again, like some of those guys, like the easiest way to look at it is like, am I scared that they're going to be rolled against me? What's the story that I can tell about that guy getting in my lineup? And that's generally how it goes. Like, should I release this guy or not, from from my perspective when it comes to the strategy of the guys I'm holding on to. So when I look at that guy, it's like, well, I need like 3 injuries and a left-hand turn for that guy to end up winning a league. I could probably feel a little bit better about dropping him. Like, if I release him and he's in someone else's lineup this week, how much is that going to bother me? Like, it probably not. Like, my main money league, I did end up releasing Braylon Allen last week because of the Isaiah Davis. And I got him rolled against me this week, and I was like, I'm gonna kick myself if he has a spike week, but because I was like, I can also see that this is gonna be a 50-50 timeshare with Isaiah Davis, and I was like, I'm not really worried about like a 50-50 split when it comes to like Braylon Allen. That's why I made that move. That's just how I would generally look at some of the stuff that goes on out there. So again, that's what I'm generally looking down. Like, can I tell you who to drop? No, like that's the second rule of the channel. Like, don't listen to me. So like, that's how it goes. But like, I can tell the story about like, is that guy going to hurt me? Is that guy going to help me? What are the chances either one of these things occur from a running back perspective? And that's why, like, I'll go off on my tangent here when it comes to Sean Tucker. Is there's like one left-hand turn right now, and Sean Tucker is a league winner. Like, he goes full bell cow on a pretty good offense. That's how it comes down to it. So like, he should have been held on to for most of the season, because you're just holding on to a guy that has a road to win leagues. I go back and I can talk about like your Elijah Moores. He's a guy like when Deshaun Watson got injured, he has a road to be a wide receiver 2. He probably never has a road to be a wide receiver 1. Even if Jerry Jeudy goes down and Cedric Tillman remains out, it's still going to be really hard for him to jump into that next tier of guys. So like, yeah, he should be rostered in all leagues, absolutely. But when it comes to like, well, what team do I have together? Like, should I be holding on to him? Should I be letting him be someone else's problem? Do I want him rolled against me? Those are a lot of questions to be asking that you need to ask yourself. In the case of Elijah Moore right now, I'm less concerned with Elijah Moore being rolled against me if Cedric Tillman's in the lineup. Right now, should he be rostered? Yes, because Elijah Moore's out of the lineup. So like, hopefully that kind of helps you guys when it comes to like my theory behind some of this stuff. But again, like, never listen to me. So in this one, and again, like the guy that asked the question, like, should I roll, Rachaad White or Braylon Allen? Sorry, hopefully you made your playoffs, but you couldn't have predicted that like Bucky Irving necessarily was going to go down with that injury. Again, this is the stuff like, can you get cute? Like, oh, I don't really know if I should be rolling guy X because I don't know if he's going to be healthy the entire game. This is why fantasy football is a cruel mystery when it comes down to that one. So he's only at 16% snaps in this game. And then Sean Tucker, he jumps up to 18% snaps after getting like no snaps last week. And then Rachaad White, he gets pretty close to full bell cow, 76% snaps in this one, 2 red zone carries. He tugged on one of them, 1 red zone target. He also tugs on one of them. So again, could you have told that story ahead of time? Maybe. I don't know. But like, hopefully you rolled him on this case when it comes down to it. All right. And then when it comes to the wide receivers for the Buccaneers, you're looking at Mike Evans had 67 air yards to Jalen McMillan's 58. Sterling Shepard had 53 in this game. Jalen McMillan, I can bring him up right here. So he was at 79% snaps, 7 for 4 for 59. Again, those 2 touchdown passes that he had. One of those was a red zone target. It was a 15-yarder. The other one was a 29-yarder in this one. And then Sterling Shepard was at 48% snaps. He's the only other guy to really be talking about one, the 6 for 4 for 63. So again, I don't know if you're necessarily going to get a shootout game with the Buccaneers, but their defense is kind of bad enough that they could theoretically get into a shootout game. And then if you're in a deep enough leagues that you have to be talking about like Sterling Shepard. Trey Palmer was down to 11% snaps. Ryan Miller was at 6% snaps. He did to get a concussion. Raheem Jarrett was at 16% snaps in this game. And then finally, Cade Otton, talk about him, 97% snaps, 4 for 3 for 70 in this game. Not a lot to talk about. Like, he's just a weekly roll. If you still have him, he's just a weekly roll. You could talk about like how far down the pecking order he is with like White, especially if Bucky Irving's going to be out, and with Jalen McMillan now in there, but like he's just a weekly role when it comes down to overall usage. Didn't write down any air yards, red zone opportunities, or yak when it comes down to it. I think it's mostly yak that he had in the game, thinking off the top of my head. All right, moving on to the Cardinals in this one. They were playing from behind against the Seahawks most of this game. So the news to be wondering about, like, can we get like league winner out of the running backs? Like James Conner was at 77% snaps in this one. 4 red zone carries, one red zone target. Like, definitely going to be one of those guys we could talk about getting a punt at the price that you paid for him. Trey Benson was at 14% snaps in this game. And then Amari DiMercato was at 11% snaps, 4 for 17. And remember, they were playing from behind most of this game. So I imagine if Connor goes down, both DiMercato and Trey Benson are going to have a certain amount of value. If you want league winning upside, you want to be rostering Trey Benson. If you want 40-degree day, it's Amari DiMercato. My guess is going to be that like you get a very large range of outcomes when it comes to Trey Benson within the offense, because it would not be surprising, especially if the Cardinals continue to be like playoff relevant in the West, that Amari DiMercato may end up getting the red zone work, if you're wondering about all that stuff. Why I would look at those guys that way. Now, a lot to say, or not a lot to say about the receivers when it comes down to these guys. Marvin Harrison did have a red zone opportunity for 83 air yards, and Michael Wilson is going to continue to be causing a problem when it comes to like your Marvin Harrison shares. He's going to be firmly in wide receiver 3 land, 83% snaps, 3 for 2 for 57 and a touchdown. That was a 41-yarder in this one, if you're wondering about that. And then Trey McBride is Trey McBride, 94% snaps, 14 for 7 for 70 in this game. Like, he's probably going to end up as tight end 1 on the year, or pretty close to it, especially if he can find his way into the end zone. I didn't write down any red zone stuff when it comes down to it. Moving on to the Chargers, no news right now on whatever's going on with Justin Herbert. We can maybe talk about the Buccaneers game turning into a shootout. Otherwise, like, these 2 games against the Patriots and the Broncos are going to be really ugly when it comes down to it. Let's see. Moving on to Gus Edwards. So he was at 43% snaps. That was down in this one. He had 4 red zone opportunities. I got to pull him up. He did have 4 red zone opportunities. He did tug on one of those. Hassan Hoskins was down to 2% snaps. The big news on all of this, if you want to speculate, is 53% snaps, Kimani Vidal, 8 for 40, or 8 for 34 in this one. He also had a target, and he did have a red zone opportunity that I did write down. So if you're wondering about that. But again, remember, the Broncos are going to be pretty ugly. The Patriots are going to be pretty ugly. And maybe you can get like a better outing, the receiving work that we generally want from receiving or from running backs in this one. I don't know if you're ever going to get Gus Bus moving out of the red zone work, because one of the things that Gus Bus is really good at is just falling forward for like 2 yards and falling in the end zone. That's why we can look at him, and I'll bring this one up, in 2023, where he fell in the end zone 13 times on 800 yards rushing. They just got down there and said, hey, Gus, you're really good at that. So again, he's probably going to inherit or continue to have that red zone work, and that would mean that like he's going to be in that RB2 discussion regardless of how much Vidal eats into him. All right, moving on to the Chiefs, and I'm not going to talk about Patrick Mahomes one way, shape, or form, if you're wondering about that. All right, let me go back here. I forgot to talk about the Chargers and the receivers real quick. So with Ladd McConkey out, and there's no news on him right now, you did get somewhat of a predictive week out of Josh Palmer taking over those vacated opportunities. 87% snaps, 9 for 6 for 78 in this one. And then let's see, I didn't write down any air yards, so there wasn't a lot of those. And then Quentin Johnston in this one, 80% snaps, 7 for 5 for 48 and a touchdown. That was a red zone tug that he had in this one. On the top of that, now Will Disley did go out with a shoulder, and it says like expected to miss multiple weeks. I didn't even see that because that wasn't available yesterday when I was writing down all my notes. So now we can start talking about like who's gonna be the guy to take over, especially because Hayden Hurst is gonna go or he's on IR right now. If he comes off, like this was 15 days ago that he was placed on IR, he's not gonna come off more than likely in the next couple of weeks. Tucker Fisk is gonna be the blocker. 6'4", 285. Yeah, he's the blocker. And then Stone Smart, the converted quarterback, he's going to be the pass receiver. So again, if you want to get cute, 3 for 3 for 54 in this game, it would be Stone Smart. I don't trust him. Maybe you could talk about that Buccaneers game. Outside of that, like, I don't know. And this is primarily like based off, you can guess that Ladd's going to be out again for another week if you want to get cute and roll some of these guys that are going to be out there. All right. Moving on to the Chiefs, and I said I already not going to talk about like Patrick Mahomes in this one. So Isaiah Pacheco, his snaps were up to 46% snaps in this game. That's going to be based off of Kareem Hunt going down to 29% snaps. A little surprising. Carson Steele was at 9% snaps in this one. I imagine it doesn't matter. Like even if Kareem Hunt does get is inactive during any one of these weeks, if Isaiah Pacheco goes down, he's probably going to go back into that like running back 2 role, that volume based like running back 2 role with the red zone opportunities. I imagine it's not going to end up being Carson Steele. So like Kareem Hunt's still going to have a lot of value. Especially if we're going to be waiting on like potentially an injury when it comes down to it. P. Ryden's role has remained relatively the same in this one. I got to go pull him up. He did actually get a red zone carry in this game. So again, if you're wondering about all that stuff, I imagine that you can be rolling out Isaiah Pacheco expecting that you're going to get like 50 to 60% snaps. I don't necessarily think you're going to get that like ramp up, but like these 2 games, or I should at least say the Cleveland game does project into a shootout. The Houston game could get like be very unpredictable when it comes down to obviously Pittsburgh is going to be a slog that we can project that all that stuff out. And then CEH still was inactive in this game. Moving on to the receivers, this does get a little bit interesting. So I'll go here so I can talk about DeAndre Hopkins. So 55% snaps stays relatively consistent, 9 for 4 for 32 in this one. He did have a touchdown in this one. It was a red zone opportunity that he tugged on. He did have 163 air yards to Worthy's 24 and Kelsey's 49. If you're wondering about all that stuff. So like, he is the number 1 target in the offense, I guess, from a fantasy perspective to be going after in this one. Worthy, he does get the upgrade. Like you can really definitely at 83% snaps, 6 for 5 for 41 in this one. He did have a red zone opportunity. Now you can start talking about him being a weekly role. And then the Cleveland game, if you want to get spicy, the Houston game, yeah, you can be looking at rolling him out there, trying to catch like a game with more scoring involved that he could get into. Justin Watson was down to 51% snaps. He had like 0 opportunities. I think that was like actually a good. Take this one off. I think his snaps actually went up. Yeah, it went up slightly, but no opportunities in this one. They did IR Mecole Hardman. So again, those red zone opportunities are probably going to have to be sent to other people. You could talk about like Noah Gray, Travis Kelce, Hopkins, and Isaiah Pacheco are going to get upgrades because those stupid red zone carries are going to go someplace else. In this one, Juju was at 49% snaps. He did have 2 targets. So again, that's about it when it comes to receivers. The wide receivers when it comes to the Chiefs. Travis Kelce in this one, 83% snaps, 6 for 5 for 45 in this one. 2 red zone targets for him on those 6 targets. And then Noah Gray, like even in your, I shouldn't say like shallower leagues, but like not your super deep leagues, like he's still running somewhere as like the wide receiver 3 in this offense. 5 for 4 for 26, and he did have a red zone opportunity. So again, if you're in that type of situation that you need to be going after Noah Gray, it still says continue to roll him out and try and catch a touchdown pass when it comes down to it. All right. When it comes to the Colts, I don't think I have any news anywhere on them. I didn't see anything on Josh Downs yesterday, if you're wondering about that. So, like, yeah, no news on Josh Downs when it comes down to it. Moving on to the Redskins. Austin Eckler's still on IR, if you're wondering about that. Like, no news on Noah Brown as of yesterday that I saw, so I'm not going to really pull him up. I don't know how fantasy relevant Noah Brown's going to be outside of deeper leagues. When it comes to the Cowboys and their game last night with the Bengals, Rico Dowdle was up to 77% snaps. The caveat on this, like Zeke was down to 10% snaps. Zeke did get a red zone carry. Dowdle did get 4 red zone opportunities in this one overall, if you're wondering. So like we can talk about like it's more matchup based at this point. Like I do like the Carolina and the Tampa games to be rolling out Rico Dowdle, especially at the price that you likely paid for him. It just becomes like week 17, what you're going to be doing with him in your chip. If you're rolling him as your flex or something like that, I probably wouldn't overthink it. If you're like wondering about like your RB2 spot or something like that, if you have like other options, that's only week 17. Those other 2 games do look pretty good, especially the receiving work that like he may end up getting, chasing the little bit of that. All right. Moving on to the receivers. Let's see. I don't have a lot to talk about like CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks was up to 60% snaps in this game. A little disappointing. 3 for 1 for 3 did have a red zone opportunity that he tugged on in this one. Jalen Tolbert was at 65% snaps in the game. And then Jonathan Mingo, he didn't get the uptick that we're kind of expecting that he might get. Primarily, that would have been if CeeDee Lamb would have missed. He was down at 23% snaps, only one target. This is more dynasty stuff. Jalen Brooks in this one, I'm bringing him back up. He was a healthy scratch. This is all, again, dynasty stuff, if you're wondering about all that stuff. He was the scratch in this one. Flournoy was still active. He didn't get a lot of opportunity. I think he was down to like 2% snaps in this game. All right. Jake Ferguson, 77% snaps. Schoonmaker was at 38% snaps. Again, because the offense is down when it comes to like Jake Ferguson, you probably spent on him. He did have a certain amount of like unicorn in him early. There's been injuries. When it comes down to it, you're going to matchup shop. You probably could get an opportunity against Carolina and the Buccaneers. Philadelphia, maybe a different direction. Hopefully you've already pivoted because of the injuries and stuff like that when it comes down to them. All right. Moving on to the Dolphins in this one. So A-Chain, we're talking about like how valuable he's going to be next year, this year with when it comes down to him. So he's the wide receiver 3 in the offense. 83% snaps. That's up with Raheem Mostert being out with a hip. 8 red zone carries. He tugged on one of those. And then 2 red zone targets this game also. 7 for 6 for 45. Like, yeah, this is very elite level usage. This is like Kamara efficiency levels, like, early in his career. Like, that's what you're looking at when it comes down to him. So, like, I'm not overthinking this when it comes down to him. This is more like, how valuable is he going to be next year? Like, you can start talking about him being a first-round draft pick next year when it comes down to it. All right. And then Jalen Wright was at 19% snaps. Jeff Wilson was active. He's at 6% snaps. I don't have a lot to say about the wide receivers. You're either rolling Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle or you're not. Tyreek Hill had 1 red zone opportunity. He tugged on it. And then Jalen Waddle, coming off this like big spike week that he had like 2 weeks ago, he 82% snaps, 12 for 9 for 99. He did have 3 red zone opportunities. Again, that's just how it goes. The difference between your 16.4 points, again, your scoring settings are a little bit different than mine, and having like more of a spike week that you'll remember if you needed that week going in there. Again, Houston may not be a bad role. San Francisco, I mean, it's not so much if these are good defenses, it's if these offenses have to play more aggressive because they're getting scored on. That's what you're looking at. And Houston, San Francisco, and the Browns, I would say, like, yeah, you could be looking at a lot of points. So if you're looking at your Jalen Wright. Now, dynasty perspective-wise, where is he at? OBJ was down to 14% snaps in this game right there. And then if you're in deep enough leagues that you need to be starting to speculate on this, Malik Washington was up to 42% snaps. Only 1 target in this game, but like, we can start talking about him theoretically being draftable in redraft next year when it comes down to it. And then Jonnu Smith, like, he's going to have like league winner written all over him if he can give you something in your playoffs when it comes down to it. Red zone opportunity that he tugged on, 4 for 3 for 44. The snap share did go down to 64% snaps in this one. So again, like, these 3 matchups are probably good enough to not overthink him when it comes down to it. All right. Eagles. I did see some stuff on Twitter today. They were talking about the Eagles, and they have like the lowest neutral pass rate in the league. They're just running the football, and I don't blame them when they have like Saquon doing the Saquon things that you have. So again, like, some of the guys talking about like how good AJ Brown is, it don't matter. They don't care about your fantasy lineup. 95% snaps, 4 for 4 for 43, and then he also, if you rolled him out like me, and he gives you the sub 40-degree day, the red zone opportunity, 2 red zone opportunities went to Devonta Smith. He did tug on one of those, and then finally, if you're wondering, let's see, Dallas Goedert, he goes on IR with that knee, and then Grant Calcaterra just off a snap share, deeper leagues. Again, they're not throwing the football. That means that's going to downgrade Grant Calcaterra. Doesn't matter like how much I like him, how athletic he is, any of that stuff. They're just not throwing the football. So again, you're trying to get lucky that you get a red zone opportunity. That's what he did this week, and he tugged on it. If you're the Barkley owner and Kenneth Gainwell is available, he is the cuff. 24% snaps in this game. This was a lot closer than, or I shouldn't say a lot closer. I talked about this in the Griff, that this game would not be surprising if these 2 teams, it was a close game, and it was a close game. So Kenneth Walker, 24% snaps in what was relatively a close game. And then finally, from your dynasty perspectives, if you're wondering, Johnny Wilson, 50% snaps, only 1 target. And Dotson was down to 48% or 41% snaps. Sorry. All right. Let's see. Moving on to the Falcons. And again, like, hey, I don't know what to tell you when it comes down to some of this stuff. So Bijan was at 85% snaps. Algier was at 18% snaps. He did have a red zone opportunity. He tugged on that. So again, like you want to know guys to be holding on to. Algier would be a guy to be holding on to because of that road to be able to win leagues if Bijan goes down with that one. Drake London in this one, red zone opportunity. Let's see. I don't understand my notes real quick. 100% snaps. 10 for 5 for 70 in this game. I do have he had a red zone opportunity in this one. Mooney had 109 yards to or 109 air yards to Drake London's 90. Ray McLeod had 2 red zone opportunities in this game. I think that's what I meant by trying to talk about that stuff. Kyle Pitts, like again, like sorry for partying. 78% snap, 6 for 1 for 14. There's a lot of speculation on Twitter that like there is pressure to roll Michael Penix. It's not going to happen right now. Everything is saying it's going to be Kirk Cousins. So again, like, any of the problems that are going on with the offense are probably going to remain rather inconsistent. The Raiders, the Giants are both games that are probably going to be ugly when it comes down to it. So again, like trying to expect that you're going to get anything predictive out of this offense, not named Bijan, is going to be a little bit difficult if you have those guys that are going to be going on out there. All right, moving on to the Giants. That we're just talking about. So right now, Drew Lock will be the starter again if he's healthy. That's what they said yesterday. I don't know what that means. Otherwise, it's going to be Tommy DeVito. Probably from a fantasy perspective, outside of like your super flex leagues, it's probably not going to matter one way or another when it comes down to it. Tyrone Tracy Jr. This is good stuff if you want to be talking about like league winners. 83% snaps, 16 for 45 and a touchdown, 10 targets, 5 receptions, 38 yards. This is what we want. 2 red zone opportunities, and again, he tugged on one of those guys. Devin Singletary was down to 18% snaps in this game. This was a really ugly game with the Saints that they lost. But again, like it's the targets and the red zone opportunities and the snap share. That's all the good stuff. That's all you need to know when it comes down to Tyrone Tracy. And then you can start talking about like, well, are these good matchups? Like Baltimore, like they're the second best, they're the first best when it comes to rushing defense. But again, if they're using him in the passing game, like I wouldn't be overthinking that. They may end up having to pass a lot. You're going to get the receiving work when it comes down to it. Atlanta, again, that could be all over the place. And the Colts, they don't have a good defense. So like who cares? You're trying to catch a game where they can actually score points, that even though the Giants offense has been really bad. So again, like when we talk about like neighbors in this one, and going into the offseason, the idea that like you're still drafting a guy who's very talented on a bad offense. It doesn't matter with all these targets. I was trying to do the math on all targets, and it just generally, I don't care. 126 targets in 11 games. Like, that's normally going to put you in, like, top 10 wide receiver land. It doesn't matter when, like, you have, like, very low efficiency. That's the problem. Chasing all those guys. Wandale and Darius Slayton had red zone opportunities in this game. You're looking at 125 air yards for neighbors compared to Wandale's 110. Wandale actually had 110 air yards. Slayton had 84 in this one. And then this was predictive with Theo Johnson going on IR. Daniel Bellinger jumps up to 78% snaps, 7 for 5 for 45. And again, you're maybe going to guess you're going to get something out of Daniel Bellinger week 15 against the Ravens. The Falcons, you might be able to get that week 2, and the Colts. Like this is a pretty good stretch if you still are tight end needy, even though these are not necessarily like the type of offenses that you want to be buying pieces of going forward. All right, sip of green tea. Moving on to the Jags. So you're looking at Mac Jones remaining the quarterback right now, and these are not particularly good matchups. Jets, Raiders, Titans. Like you want to be staying away from. I shouldn't say you. I want to be staying away from the Jaguars if I can get away with it. So ETN, he was down to 47% snaps in this game. I'm gonna bring them up. 4 targets. He also had a red zone opportunity in this one. If you're looking at the difference between like the 40-degree day versus the spike week, Tank Bigsby, he was up to 53% snaps in this game, 18 for 55 and a touchdown, 2 for 1 for 7. 2 red zone opportunities. He tugged on one of those. And I don't know if I would necessarily want to be rolling either of these guys out outside of like desperation land. From a dynasty perspective, especially because ETN is in the final year of his deal, I don't think they picked up his option. Keelan Robinson, like 6th-round draft pick out of Texas. He's a little interesting. So I didn't even realize that he got activated off of IR, but he was at 3% snaps in this game. So again, we're going to talk about like some of these guys being shut down for the year because they're at that that point of the season that they might want to see some of these other guys. So you can talk about Tank Bigsby getting that uptick. You can also talk about like maybe Keelan Robinson getting into it a little bit. I don't know. Like the offense is pretty bad. Brian Thomas was at 115 air yards in this game. 2 red zone opportunity. I probably wouldn't be thinking him for the rest of the season. As bad as this is, I wouldn't be overthinking him. And then Parker Washington, again, I talked about this a few weeks ago. This stretch of games, I don't know how much I'd be wanting to roll him out there. So that 75% snaps, 2 for 2 for 15 was predictive. The only week that you probably were going to be able to get Parker Washington was week 13. I don't know if you're going to get anything else out of him, if you're wondering about that. And then I want to talk about like Alan Trammell. I think he was the guy, and that's not the guy. Did write down somebody else, but I don't know which one it is, so I don't care. It's deeper league stuff, if you're wondering. Evan Ingram was at 71% snaps. Brenton Strange was at 44% snaps. Neither of them had red zone opportunities. So again, pick your poison when it's going to be going after the rest of the Jaguars. Only guy I probably would really want to be rolling is Brian Thomas for the rest of the year in that offense. All right, Jets. Did talk a little bit about this in Chasing the Dragon. If you have to go after Aaron Rodgers because of the matchup, week 15, week 16, week 17, I definitely see the logic behind it. I don't know how much I want to do that. I did talk about this in also Chasing the Dragon. It says like not expected to be shut down. At this point, I will just say that I could definitely see the logic in the Jets trading Breece Hall, and you're not going to be able to trade Breece Hall if he's injured. That's all I got to say on that one. So I don't care what they say about that. I would be really surprised that he suits up again for the Jets, period. Because I don't know what the benefit to you when you're going to have to rebuild is when you brought in 2 rookies, and right now they look pretty good. So like Braylon Allen, 54% snaps, 11 for 43, 5 for 4 for 38. This is generally stuff that we would normally want, the receiving work. And then I did talk about this Isaiah Davis. Like this was somewhat predictive. 53% snaps, 10 for 40, and a touchdown, 6 for 3 for 27 in this one. And I want to talk about this. So you're looking at 2 red zone opportunities for Braylon Allen, 2 red zone opportunities, and a touchdown for Isaiah Davis. He also had 2 more red zone targets in this one. So again, like, Isaiah Davis is definitely in RB2 land if Breece Hall as it continues to be out, and I could definitely see that Breece Hall is going to be shut down. And we can talk about from a dynasty perspective him getting traded, because again, like you're not going to win any real life championships having Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis all on your roster when you're only going to be basically playing one of them at a time. If you're wondering about the rest of the Jets wide receivers in this one, Garrett Wilson had 106 air yards, 48 yak, 2 red zone opportunities. Devontae Adams, 2 red zone opportunities. One of them was a touchdown on his 76 air yards on his 51 yak. And I'll bring up these guys so we can talk about this. Again, Jacksonville's bad. The Rams, they might have to be throwing a lot. The Bills, they might have to be throwing a lot. I'm not going to be overthinking the Jets receivers in this one. Allen Lazard was at 78% snaps. He did come off of IR, only 1 target in this one. And then to show how badly that they're being run. So Malachi Corley coming off of 60% snaps, like he's a healthy scratch, like because it was a bad draft pick at the 3rd round valuable. If you're wondering about that, don't care about the Jets tight ends. Moving on to the Lions, and again, like I will talk a little bit about this one. The Bills game, week 15. Again, if you didn't get your bye, like this would be the one to be rolling out like all the Lions that you can get, like coming off of like 86 total points between the Bills and the Rams, expecting that we're going to get another massive amounts of yards and scoring in this one. Jahmyr Gibbs was at, let me see, pull it down here. He did have 3 red zone carries in this game, 2 red zone targets. He tugged on the red zone target. David Montgomery had 5 red zone carries. He tugged on one of them. So again, I'm not overthinking either of those guys. The Sun God had a red zone carry, but again, like they don't care about your fantasy lineup. They're like, this is the problem when you have like really good offenses and they have a lot of other places to be going around. That's where you can like start talking about like Tim Patrick. This 2 touchdown performance, like I'm not going to say like 2 touchdowns, but definitely being a part of a good offense and then being the guy that they're not trying to take away. Now we can start talking about rolling him against the Bills. Did talk about that in Chasing the Dragon in this one. And let's see, Sam Laporta did have 3 red zone targets in this game. So if you're wondering, that's why the more they get down there, the more opportunities you have to score on that one. 90% snaps, 7 for 5 for 54 in this game. And then moving on to the Packers. Really interesting usage when it comes to the running back. So if you want to know about like who to hold, so like Emmanuel Wilson was down to 6% snaps in this game, and then you're looking at Chris Brooks going up to 28% snaps, and again, this was kind of a knife fight. So yeah, I don't know if you should be now holding on to Chris Brooks with theoretically Josh Jacobs being down, but Josh Jacobs is definitely the guy. 80% snaps, and then the only thing we really talk about was the 3 rushing touchdowns that he had. Right now, no news on Romeo Doubs. So we did get a little bit of a consolidation of opportunities when it comes to these guys. Jalen Reed, and again, this is more like the price that you paid, thinking that you had like a league winner. 50% snaps, only 1 opportunity in this game. So again, like pieces of the good offenses. We can talk about somewhat of the predictive week for Christian Watson. 92% snaps, 7 for 4 for 114. Did have a fumble lost in this one. Again, that snap share remained consistent. I imagine it's going to go down when Romeo Doubs comes back. He's probably going to go back in that like 70% range, but he's a weekly role as a wide receiver 3. All right, let's see. Tucker Kraft, 91% snaps, 2 red zone opportunities, a touchdown again. Because he's a tight end, I'm not going to overthink that when it comes down to any of that stuff, unless I have the ability to pivot to somebody else. All right, moving on to the Panthers. So this would be one of the ones that we can start talking about, like in a game that would have said like Bryce Young should not have been good. He was good enough, and they probably could have won the game. There was a very bad drop by Xavier Leggett in the game. They may have won the game if Leggett had been able to pull that in. So when I talk about like Bryce Young, like this would have been a game no one would have been rolling out Bryce Young coming off of Tampa Bay, which we could talk about Tampa Bay being a good role for Bryce Young. Now we can start talking about like, can we trust Bryce Young going up against Dallas or Tampa Bay to finish the season off? And again, that's up to you if you want to trust that. But this would have been a week that I would have thought this would have been a lot worse for Bryce Young, and at least he was serviceable when it comes down to it. Now, very, not good news when it comes to, where's he at? Jonathan Brooks right now. So he goes on IR. He re-tears his ACL. I would imagine at this point, like from a dynasty perspective, he's probably not going to play next year. Chuba goes 97% snaps with him out. So that's about all I have to talk about. Like 6 red zone opportunities. He tugs on one of them, 2 red zone targets. I imagine it's going to stay relatively consistent. I have no idea. Like you want to chase Mike Boone, be my guest. I imagine that like Chuba's going to stay in that like 80 to 90% role for the rest of the season, and then the only thing that Mike Boone may have is a certain amount of value if Chuba goes down when it comes down. All right, wide receivers for the Panthers. Adam Thielen in this one. I'm gonna pull my notes up. 75% snaps in this game. 11 for 9 for 102. He did have a red zone opportunity. And then again, I already talked about like Xavier Leggett in this one. Still going to be in that wide receiver 3 range with that drop. 8 targets, 2 receptions, 39 yards in this one. 137 air yards for him versus Thielen's 130. And then David Moore was down to 54% snaps. So again, like he's fringe in your deeper leagues if you need that wide receiver 3 and there's no one else available. Otherwise, like the 2 guys like Leggett and Thielen, again, your guess is going to be as good as mine. The spike week is probably going to be larger on Xavier Leggett, but the safe guy is going to be Thielen. You got to be in deeper leagues to be chasing Leggett in the first place, and then no news on Coker right now with that quad. I would imagine that like they may not play him again, unless there's an injury to another wide receiver that they need to pull him out. And then moving on to the tight ends, and again, I wouldn't be chasing any of this stuff, but I will bring this up. 49% snaps for Jatavion Sanders, 1 target, and then Tommy Tremble in this one, he was at 65% snaps, 2 for 1 for 3, and the red zone opportunity that he converted into a touchdown. All right, Patriots. I don't think I have any news on them. I do have news on them. KJ Osborne, he was released by the Patriots. I don't think this necessarily matters from a fantasy perspective when it comes to the Patriots wide receivers. It probably does matter in deeper leagues. We'll talk about the Vikings. We're talking about like really deep leagues, dynasty leagues. If you're wondering about that news. Moving on, the Raiders. So a little bit of news today. So Zamir White goes on IR with that quad. So now we can start talking about Sincere McCormick. 61% snaps, 15 for 78, 3 for 2 for 11. Gotta bring him up. He also had 5 red zone carries and a red zone target. So yeah, if he's available, but there's a big gigantic caveat on this. And it's all going to come down to what they're going to do with Alexander Madison. He was out again with an ankle in this one. If he comes back, and I did make this comment, I can't imagine that Alexander Madison is going to be active and not have a significant role in the offense. Now, he could end up going back and taking this Amir Abdullah role. Amir Abdullah goes down from like 90% snaps in week 12 to 39% snaps. He could end up being in this like purely passing down back work, which is fine. That means that you could get like some type of volume-based RB2 when it comes to Sincere McCormick. So again, like not a guy that I want to be rolling. Again, not a good offense, but not a guy that I want to see in someone else's lineup going up against me in the playoffs. And with what he did, it wouldn't be surprised me in like lesser competitive leagues that he's going to be available. One way, shape, or form. He didn't score a touchdown. That means he didn't spike. So there might not be people going after him. The red zone work alone is probably not something I want to see going forward. Now, not a lot to talk about with the wide receivers. You got 85 air yards to Tucker's 77 when it comes to Jacoby Myers. And again, I don't know how much I really want to be trusting any of these guys. That's not the guy I want. Any of these guys to win leagues. This is the Raiders offense. Again, like Jacoby Myers is going to be in that wide receiver 2 range. He's going to have a limited ceiling because of the offense. 10 for 7 for 67 in this game. We can talk about like, Brock Bowers always already going to win you leagues. There's going to be a lot of people that have got to their playoffs based off of Brock Bowers. He disappointed 85% stats, 5 for 3 for 49. He did have a red zone opportunity. Now, the big news in all this, and again, this is probably like deeper leagues that you would even think about this, is 81% snaps Michael Mayer, 9 for 7 for 68. The idea with this offense going into the season was that Michael Mayer would play the inline Y, not something he necessarily did at Notre Dame, and then Brock Bowers would play the move position F tight end, whatever you want to call it in your offense. That would allow him to be moved around the formation. That would give him some very special snaps as either like a fullback. He could get like rushing work, or he could get moved out wide, get lined up in mismatches as a wide receiver. Not just the normal like inline Y routes or the slot routes. Like he could get some like big boy stuff going on. So moving forward with these two guys, like obviously you're rolling out Brock Bowers, and again, it depends on how cute you want to get with Michael Mayer when it comes down to Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans. Yeah, he has a spike week. One of those 3 weeks, like it is predictive. That's all I will say on that when it comes down to it. All right. Moving on to the Rams, and I will start off with, when you're wrong going into the season when it comes down to these guys. So Blake Corum, he was down to 17% snaps, 8 for 34. He did have 4 red zone carries. So again, just think about that. Like, if you're going to be chasing some type of work when it comes down to it. Kyron Williams still outsnapped him, 83% snaps in this one. He did have 6 red zone carries. He converted 2 of them. So again, it's going to be a hard road to get anything out of Blake Corum, but it's there. So like either stash him if you're in deep enough leagues that you need to be chasing that desperation when it comes down to it. So the Rams right now, they are looking pretty good. San Francisco, I don't know. The Jets probably not. Arizona is going to be like very conservative script. So this may be the last week to really be chasing some of the deeper stuff when it comes to the rounds. Even when it comes to like Matthew Stafford, your 1 quarterback leagues, 2 quarterback leagues, like you probably don't have an ability to pivot on. Let's see. We'll start off with DeMarcus Robinson. Estimated DNP on Tuesday. Again, like this is, I had to check this now because when I hit live, it was not there when it comes to them. So like they play on Thursday. Let's see. No, they don't play on Thursday. They do play on Thursday. Yes, they do play on Thursday. So they play on Thursday when it comes down to this. And that's why we could talk about like DeMarcus Robinson. Now, I don't think I would be chasing the wide receiver 3 for the Rams in this week versus the 49ers. And that's not because DeMarcus Robinson's out in a game that could have a lot of scoring. It's because like I couldn't necessarily tell you who the wide receiver 3 was going to be. So Jordan Whittington, he missed some time right now with a shoulder. He was only at 13% snaps in this game. Tutu went up to 45% snaps. So I don't know how much consistency you're going to get out of that. And then maybe you're going to get like Tyler Johnson at 21% snaps slotting in there. Now, I bring all of this up because when we're talking about like Tyler Higbee, he was full on Monday and he was full on Tuesday. We might get Tyler Higbee into this offense. Now, would I be rolling Tyler Higbee? Absolutely not. Could I definitely see that we're going to get Tyler Higbee somewhat shape or form going back into his role in the offense as the fantasy playoff goes on? Yes. And it just means that like Maybe they end up rolling Tiger Higbee as that wide receiver 3 this week. So like you're not going to be able to really know who else will be rolling in this offense. And uh, I'll just say like between Puka 100 air yards to Cooper Kupp's 192, 84 yak for Puka, 3 red zone opportunities, he tugged on them, 3 red zone carries, he tugged on them. That's how you have this massive spike week when it comes down to him. And then Cooper Kupp, like just your normal like over 40 day for him, 8 for 5 for 92 and a touchdown. That was a red zone tug that he had in this one. All right. Ravens news. If you're under a rock and you haven't heard this yet, there's a couple things. So, Rashad Bateman, he was practicing yesterday. So, like our theoretical possibility that we're going to get some type of vacated opportunities, Isaiah Likely, probably not going to happen. We're not necessarily tracking that at this point. And then Deontay Johnson, he was suspended because I guess he told him he wasn't going to go in the game against the Eagles. That's not like a suspension that's going to happen over week 14. It's going to happen over week 15 when it comes down to that. And then if you're wondering about like holding on to him after all of this, like I don't think so. But like you do, when it comes to running your roster. All right. Let's see who else we got next. The Saints, we got like a whole bunch of news to be breaking down on this one. So you're looking at like Derek Carr right now, like whatever it says won't go on IR with a broken hand. I also saw that he may have gotten a concussion at one point also in this one. And they don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be this week between Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener right now. So between these two guys, like I don't think more that you'd be rolling the defenses that are going to be going up against the Saints right now. And if you're wondering, like that's the Redskins, that's the number one guy to be picking up. And the Packers, if they're available, you can start talking about like if you really want to get dicey to go out there and roll the Raiders against the Saints in week 17 if their car continues to be out. Running back wise, Kamara was down to 72% snaps. That was predictive. 17 for 44, 5 for 5 for 35 in this game. I'm going to pull my notes up in this one. He did have a red zone opportunity. Jamal Williams was down to 7% snaps, and we did get the uptick that we were expecting with Kendrick Miller. 26% snaps, 10 for 32, a touchdown and a target in this one. That was a red zone carry that he tugged on. If you're wondering, so it didn't go to Kamara. I think this definitely downgrades Kamara. If not just slightly more than that, we can maybe start speculating that we're going to get a more of an uptick when it comes to Kendrick Miller this week. In this one, when it comes to the wide receivers, like no news on Bub Memes right now. Like his window is open. He may end up being the number one wide receiver when it comes to the offense. I don't necessarily want to be chasing any of this stuff. If you're wondering, let's see. Mason Tipton continues to be a healthy scratch. Cedric Wilson was at 37% snaps. I will talk like real quick. I did see this. I wrote this down. Whatever this means, Chris Olave visits a specialist. Whatever that means. There's another guy that we're going to talk about, like visited a specialist in this one. Let's see. Kevin Austin. That's why I pulled up Trammell for the Jaguars. So Kevin Austin, right here, 65% snaps, 5 for 1 for 5 in this game. He did have 80 air yards. So that's deeper leagues if you want to be chasing that. And then MVS, we got to go here to talk about MVS. MVS was at 71% snaps, 7 for 4 for 51 in this one. And you're looking at 126 air yards. So, like, yeah, wide receiver 3. And this is a whole bunch of if, buts, and maybes. Like, you're looking at, like, Means staying not activated. And Olave, he doesn't come off IR. There's none of that stuff. Like, maybe you could start talking about, like, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. The other thing is, like, I don't know how much I want to be chasing this with the two quarterbacks. Either of the two quarterbacks not named Derek Carr. Jawan Jennings was at 72% snaps. He did have a red zone opportunity. He tugged on it. Foster Moreau maintains his where is he at? He stays at 72% snaps. And I bring all this up because it does appear that like they don't want to be running 3 wide receivers. They don't trust their wide receivers. They'd rather have Foster Moreau on the field than their third wide receiver at this point. Let's see. Moving on to the Seahawks. Pull all this stuff up. So let's see. We'll go right here. So this was the one I was talking about, like with specialists. So whatever this means, Kenneth Walker goes and gets tests on his calf, and this may be a bigger issue when it comes down to this down the line because it may not be an ankle injury. If a guy plays with like a bad calf, then they can tear their Achilles. It just may not be worth it to the Seahawks to roll him out there and blow his Achilles. So you might get a significant amount of time that he misses when it comes to Kenneth Walker. Now, again, hopefully you've been rostering your cuffs, yours and everybody else's. 80% snaps, Zach Charbonnet, 22 for 134, 2 touchdowns. One of them was a 51-yarder, 7 for 7 for 59 in this game. You're looking at 8 red zone carries to go along with that. Now, the other caveat to this going down that line, Kenny McIntosh, and I like Kenny McIntosh coming out of Georgia, 23% snaps, 7 for 38, 2 for 2 for 7 to complement Zach Charbonnet. You might get a slight uptick in this when it comes to Kenny McIntosh. And right now, like, I would be tracking Zach Charbonnet to remain the Seattle Seahawks running back for the foreseeable future. If you're wondering about the Seahawks, I don't have a lot to say about DK. Tyler Lockett had his snaps go back up to 67% snaps. The one target that he had was a red zone opportunity. JSN's going to get really close to winning leagues. 97% snaps, 5 for 5 for 82 and a touchdown. So he's probably the guy that I would rather be rolling over DK at this point attached to this offense. Noah Fant was back, 59% snaps, 4 for 3 for 18, a red zone opportunity. AJ Barner was down to 38% snaps. Moving on to the Steelers. A lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to the Steelers wide receiver room. So George Pickens, unlikely to play week 15. Now we can start playing like where those targets are going to go. Remember, the two guys that I would be primarily expecting to get the uptick would be Pat Freiermuth. He's available. 62% snaps, 3 for 3 for 48, and a touchdown. And this one, I want to pull this up and make sure. That was a red zone opportunity that he had. And then the other guy that I would be expecting to get the uptick on, first and foremost, would be Jalen Warren. 52% snaps, 9 for 47, 5 for 2 for 25. I expect that his targets might go up in this one. And then Najee was at 42% snaps, 16 for 53, and a touchdown. Didn't really write anything down when it comes to that. The Cordell Patterson remains consistent, 14% snaps. He did lose another fumble in this one. When it comes to the other wide receivers, if you're wondering, and this is why I went chasing of those, Van Jefferson, 74% snaps, red zone opportunity, touchdown. Mike Williams would maybe be the guy that I would be chasing right here in this one, and he's right there. He was only at 29% snaps, 4 for 3 for 36, and 78 air yards. So make sure 78 air yards in this one. The other guys that you'd be looking at if you're trying to chase these vacated opportunities for the Steelers, and again, this is not something that I would necessarily want to be doing in these games. Like Philadelphia, they might have to throw. Baltimore, they might have to throw. Both those games. Calvin Austin was only at 35% snaps. Scotty Miller, I do like Scotty Miller, but like 5'9", 174. And where's Calvin Austin? Calvin Austin's like 160. These guys are not going to be every down players. They're more slot guys. 52% snaps, 5 for 4 for 38. Like Scotty Miller would be the guy over Calvin Austin. I would still be speculating on Mike Williams if you want that spike week. Ben Skoranek can be an every down player. 6'3", 224. He's wide receiver, fullback, H-back type. 31% snaps. Like, you got to be like really desperate to be chasing like theoretically the number one wide receiver when it comes to the Steelers, even though these are 2 good weeks. And the 2 guys that I would probably be looking at, and I got no news when it comes to Roman Wilson. Even if Roman Wilson comes back, I wouldn't necessarily say he's going to slot in and be anything special. But like the 2 guys that I probably like, Van Jefferson based off of snap share, Scotty Miller because he's good at football. He has been fantasy relevant. This goes back to like when he was with Tampa Bay. It's like he is somewhat good at football. And then Ben Skoranek, if you want the other guy that I think might roll as the number 2 in 2 wide receiver sets, that's not Mike Williams. Mike Williams would be the one guy that I would feel the most comfortable about going after. I got no news when it comes to the Texans, the Titans. One of the things I did see talked about is Will Levis, I guess, played injured. He did re-injure his AC joint and his shoulder. That's maybe part of the reason why he's so bad. Maybe it's just because Will Levis is bad at football. Tony Pollard, 63% snaps in this one. 3 red zone opportunities, 1 red zone target to go along with all this stuff. That's with Tajay Spears. 38% snaps, no red zone stuff. Like, he only had like 8 total opportunities compared to Tony Pollard. So again, like you're sticking with Tony Pollard. Tajay Spears should be rostered as a cuff, theoretically, when it comes down to it. Calvin Ridley in this one, 12 for 7 for 59, 3 red zone targets that didn't get converted. So again, I continue to roll Calvin Ridley. The Bengals, the Colts, and Jacksonville. I would not be surprised that Calvin Ridley wins a lot of leagues this year off of that one. And then Nick Westbrook-Akine, 94% snap, 2 for 1 for 19 in this one. One of these two was a red zone opportunity. So he almost gave you what you wanted if you would have been rolling him out there. And I would continue to roll him out against these 3 games, regardless of whether or not Will Levis is the starting quarterback. If you're wondering about that, I don't care about Chig. And then finally, to finish all this stuff off when it comes down to it, like Sam Darnold, like when you're right, I'll just say like when you're right, league winner. Bears, that's going to be a coin flip. I imagine that he's going to give you a 40-degree day against Seahawks and probably a 40-degree day against the Packers. I imagine he's going to finish fairly strong. I don't think that there's going to be any more spike weeks out of him. This would have been the week to be rolling Sam Darnold. If you're wondering about that stuff, Aaron Jones in this one, he was down to 63% snaps in this game. 3 red zone opportunities. He tugged on one. He also had a red zone target, I believe, in this one. Maybe that was last week that I didn't clear out. And then Ty Chandler, no work. And Cam Akers in this one, 32% snaps, 5 for 37. So yeah, probably would be rostering that cuff when it comes down to it. Wide receivers, this would have been the Justin Jefferson spike week. 7 for 7 for 132 and 2 touchdowns, except for the fact that he got overshadowed by Jordan Addison doing 12 for 8 for 133 and 3 touchdowns when it comes down to this, guys, in this one. If you're wondering, 5 red zone targets for Jordan Addison this week compared to Justin Jefferson's. 2 red zone targets, 136 air yards for Jordan Addison compared to Justin Jefferson's 108. Jalen Naylor was at 40% snaps. This is like deep dark leagues. Dynasty leagues, Jalen Naylor. Would not be surprised that KJ Osborne comes back to the Vikings, and that might hurt you if you're holding Jalen Naylor to go back up to like 80-90% snaps if there's an injury in this offense. TJ Hawk did have 2 red zone opportunities on a 62% snaps. Josh Oliver back 56% snaps when it comes down to all that stuff. So if you're tracking on all this stuff, hopefully you can make your correct moves to stay alive in your playoffs and be back next week for extra after waivers. Anyway, that's what I got, and I'll see you guys hopefully on Friday with the Griff.